Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Feathering the Eagle's Nest. I am Michelle Jefferson, your host. This is Liberty Works Radio Network, and the phone number for tonight is 410-848-9191, and I do thank you very much for listening. Folks, I know I'm not alone in having enough of Barack Obama and his ilk. It's not bad enough that they've had 6 years to destroy all that is good and great about our country, but what they're doing on their way out the door and in reaction to the election is despicable. O'Malley is trying to ram all kinds of regulations down farmers' throats while Obama is stoking the racial tension he and Eric Holder have created, and Dianne Feinstein, with Obama's blessing, dumps a politically motivated torture report. You know, we shook our heads when the Clintons pulled all the W keys from every keyboard while filling their pockets with china and silver. And that was childish. But what we're witnessing now is an all-out Democrat temper tantrum with deadly consequences. Obama arrogantly admits the Feinstein retaliation report will most certainly give our enemies an excuse to act out, and they've heightened security of American embassies worldwide. They're intentionally placing Americans in harm's way while the press remains silent. The world deserves to know America is a nation of laws, and we follow those laws. This is coming out of the mouth of the most lawless administration ever, and I'm asking, when is this madness going to end? All of this has major consequences, and I don't believe it's accidental. The intentional misinformation put out about Officer Darren Wilson shooting Michael Brown was to incite riots. The horrible position police officers are now in will, in my opinion, end up with more murdered police. Because I guarantee you, every police officer in America is hesitating before doing what they've been trained to do in fear of becoming the next Darren Wilson. And that hesitation is what will get them killed. Now that the grand jury testimony is public, the media, Obama, Holder, and Sharpton have an obligation to tell everyone it was a legitimate shooting. Wilson did what he was trained, and Michael Brown was wrong to do all he did, including stealing. You know, we tell our kids all the time how a split decision changes your life forever. Yet when we have a teachable moment, it's used to divide us along racial lines with this group. And I'm angry and I'm disappointed at how this is all playing out. Holder is issuing new guidelines, and before leaving office, now this is just a spoof, folks, police officers will now have to hold the door open while criminals walk out with the stolen goods. They'll be expected to block traffic while drug dealers drive their caravans through our neighborhoods, and most likely hold the woman down while the husband beats her and the kids. And, you know, I know it sounds silly to say that, but so did everything that we said 6 years ago. And I don't hear anyone laughing except Obama and his friends. And today, those who promised to stop Obama in his tracks have sold us down the river yet again by passing the temporary spending bill that fully funds Obamacare and his illegal, unconstitutional executive amnesty for the next fiscal year. I'll tell you, folks, it doesn't get any crazier than this. All I can say is put your seatbelts on, because it's going to be a bumpy ride. Last week, I do have to apologize. I was supposed to have our new sheriff on, and we were unable to make that happen. And at short notice, I don't think you guys want to sit here and listen to me talk for 45 minutes straight. So we were able to get things worked out, and today we do have our newly elected Sheriff Jim Dewees joining us. Jim, how are you doing this evening?
Good, Michelle. How are you?
I'm doing very well.
Good.
Jim, I greatly appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight. I'm sure you have a full plate still with everything, getting your feet wet, just walking through the door. But I'd like to talk about this stuff like we talked about yesterday, and what your take is on how well Darren Wilson did his job.
Well, he did exactly what you said. He did what he was trained to do. You know, it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback after you've gotten limited information. And if you've had the opportunity to go online and read the grand jury's report, then I think you can understand why he did what he did. It is extremely disappointing, and the media does portray those circumstances in 2 or 3 seconds of an issue that was far more than that. I've been in Darren Wilson's position, and you're absolutely right. I do not want my deputies, nor do I want any police officer hesitating when it comes to protecting their own lives, and it appears to me that that's exactly what Darren Wilson did. He protected his own life. And there are thousands of assaults annually on police officers and hundreds that are killed. And I don't want my deputies to be one of those that is assaulted and killed because they waited for 1 second and thought, is this the right thing to do? Is this the right thing to do? They're trained to do it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay. They're trained to protect their lives and the lives of others. And it appears to me that's exactly what Darren Wilson did. And unfortunately, if you put yourself in those situations, and I think we spoke about this yesterday, if you run from the police, if you assault the police, if you do those sort of acts, nothing good is going to come from it. Nothing good is going to come from it. And in this case...
Well, I don't see why they think that they're going to be able to get away with it. I mean, you have the gun.
Well, you do, and,
right.
and obviously, and the gun's the last thing you pull out. It just is. I mean, in police work, we work off of the premise: ask, tell, then make, and we don't ask someone. And when they defy what we're asking them to do, and then order them to do something, and after they defy what we're ordering them to do, turn around and go, you know what? I don't think I'm going to make you today. So tell me when it's a better time for you, and I'll come back and make you. That is not what this is about. When you are asked to turn around and put your hands behind your back, or you're asked politely to do something, and then we tell you, hey, you need to do this. At some point, we've got to make you do it. And if you resist that, then bad things happen, and that has been portrayed in this particular incident, and something bad happened. This wasn't some guy that they just came upon and decided that they were going to target and harass. This is someone they were actively looking for that committed a criminal act and needed to be apprehended. And unfortunately, the circumstances rose to the level of deadly force, and I'm satisfied with what I've read and what I've seen that the officer acted appropriately.
Well, one of the other things that you and I spoke about yesterday is that, and you had mentioned a few moments ago, that you were in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you share with the listeners about what it's like to be in that situation?
Well, and I've been in it many a times, actually. I've been in several departmental shootings, and some of them split seconds, some of them where I've had to think about what's going on and the circumstances in front of me changed. And I say that I'm standing here, or I'm sitting here today speaking with you because I knew what the departmental policy was. I knew what the use of force and deadly force policy was, and I did not hesitate in order to save my life or the lives of others. And I have fought for my life on the side of the road and made the decision to shoot to protect my life. I have fought for other lives and innocent people and other police officers in several situations where I've had to make that split-second decision because I knew what the policy was, and my fear was that I was going to be killed or hurt, and so were they, and it was imminent. So I made that decision. And if for 1 second there's a couple of incidents that I was involved in where if I hesitated, then I'd be the one that you were carrying and had a big funeral for and had all the police cars and all the pomp and circumstance, and we don't want that. And so if I hesitated for 1 second, then we'd be in that situation. And I think in Darren Wilson's case, if he had hesitated, we'd be mourning him, and that's not okay. That's not okay.
Well, according to the protesters in El Sharpton, that is okay.
I'm not sure they know what they're protesting, though. I mean, I'm not sure they understand what they're protesting. I mean, there's a bigger issue here, and there's a lot of discussion that needs to take place. But at some point, the suspect in this case has to take responsibility. There's responsibility there that has to be taken by that person and putting themselves in that situation. There is a process when you're placed under arrest to contest what that arrest is about and the evidence, and that person never gave it that opportunity.
Now, I'm sure that when you were making those split-second decisions on whether you were going to save your life and for the others, you weren't looking at the person or the bad guy's skin color. You were looking at his actions and what they were doing. And the fact that we're looking at race in this way, you really don't have time to think of somebody's race. I wouldn't think that you would have that time frame or that ability to think about that when you were in the middle of something like that and would have to, it's like we said yesterday, it's fight or flight.
Yeah.
When you're in that situation, you're not thinking about somebody's race. You're thinking about how you're going to get your tail out of there alive.
Yeah, good question. And that's a great question. I got to tell you this. The only way I can recall what really took place in those incidents is by reading the letters that I've gotten of commendation on my wall, because they've happened so fast, and I've reacted so quickly that, and I couldn't tell you whether they were black, white, male, or female. It didn't really matter to me. All I knew is that my life or somebody else's life was in danger, and I needed to react the way I was trained, and I did. So you're absolutely right. That never, ever crossed my mind, and I don't believe it crosses the minds of people that have to react in split-second decisions like that, whether it's not a black, white, male, female thing. It's a preservation of life thing. That's what it amounts to.
You're absolutely right. Now, Attorney General Eric Holder is, I'm not sure if he has released or he's in the process or getting ready to release these new regulations. What kind of ramifications do you think that's going to be, and do you think it's going to be similar to what our military has to face when they are on the battlefield with some of the ridiculous rules of engagement that they're put through?
Yeah, I will have to see the trickle-down effect of that, but as far as, engage and not engage and use of force and deadly force, those policies have evolved over the years, and it is as strict as it can possibly be right now for domestic law enforcement. It just is, and to say that we have to have more restrictions, more constraints, and I just think is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, we've trained these men and women to a standard that they know when to react and when not to react, and when to use force and when not to use force. And we need to stand behind them when they do. And there are mechanisms in place when there is excessive force used. And I got to tell you, in most cases, specifically with the Ferguson case and even the New York case, what you've seen in that split second, the small reel that the media puts out, it pales in comparison to what a grand jury is looking at. And a grand jury, when they start looking at evidence in these cases, you can throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at it. If these cases were to be taken to a criminal court, they would have been vetted and watered down to the point where statements weren't allowed in and evidence wasn't allowed in. Everything's allowed in a grand jury case. And so, these folks have looked at this with a fine-tooth comb for quite a long period of time and looked at every shred of evidence that's out there and made a decision based on what the facts that they've been presented with. So, and there's a lot of knee-jerk reactions going on, and there's a lot of let's get Eric Holder out on a path and the trail and try and solve this problem. But I don't think anything that's being done by Eric Holder or the federal government is going to be passed down to me at my level and for my deputies so that it changes how they react. I don't want it to, and it's not going to.
That's one, and let's hope that doesn't happen either. But one of the things that I might get a little worried about is that a lot of times state legislatures have a knee-jerk reaction. And if, let's say, Eric Holder passes his end of things, and you know what, I'm hearing music.
Yeah, I think we're done for this segment. Okay, I'm here.
Yeah, we are done for this segment, guys. We're going to go ahead and pick this up on the other side. Our guest is Sheriff Jim Dewees, and this is Liberty Works Radio Network, Feathering the Eagle's Nest. I am Michelle Jefferson, your host. We'll see you in about 5, folks.
Now live from coast to coast and around the globe, more real talk, the kind you want, on Liberty Works Radio Network.
And good evening once again, everyone. Thanks for staying with us. This is Michelle Jefferson. I am your host. Feathering the Eagle's Nest. This is Liberty Works Radio Network, and our guest this evening is Sheriff Jim Dewees. If you'd like to call in and ask the sheriff a question, please do so at 410-848-9191. All right, Sheriff, one of the things I'd like to ask your opinion on, what impact do you think all of this is going to have on police public relations with, just in general with the public? Do you really think that the lack of trust that they're talking about and all the problems with all the police departments, what kind of ramifications are you worried about seeing?
And it's a great question. If you believe the media and what the media puts out, then there's a huge lack of trust between the citizens we protect and the police, and that's simply not the case. That is not the case. Police officers throughout the country, and specifically in Carroll County, in my county, there's an abundance of trust in what we do in serving the people and how we perform our duties. What I worry about is that people will turn on the TVs and they'll see this 5-second or 10-second clip that the media puts out there and think that there is that lack of trust when it's artificial. There isn't. Overwhelmingly, I believe people trust the police officers in their community, and they depend on them, and then they know that they're out there doing the right things and doing a good job. So, you see these protests that are taking place throughout the country, and I certainly don't want people to think that that's going on in every part of the country. And what I see is that there are factions that are trying to put together protests in areas that wouldn't normally see protests. And
right.
I see backlash, actually. I see people saying, no, that's not going to happen in my community because what you're talking about doesn't exist in my community. So there are some backlash to it. There's some good things. There's people stepping out like yourself and others that are saying, no, this is not taking place in my community, and I don't want it in my community. So there's always backlash with it. I've been around for a number of years policing, and we saw it in the early 90s with the Rodney King incident out in L.A., where we would just merely respond to a call and people would make comments. And I think once all the facts of some of these cases are completely brought out and people have a little bit of time to digest and see what truly took place, then police will be looked at favorably.
Well, I guess that's one of the things that bothers me the most about this, Jim, is that the truth is not really winning out at the end of the day. Like when you have sports folks like basketball, football coming out with the hands up, don't shoot. I mean, to me, that is the biggest slap in the face of law enforcement because that is something that
what's disappointing about that, Michelle? I'll tell you what bothers me about that, and there's so much irony to it, is that the police officers in those major metropolitan areas are protecting them same football players that are running around with their hands up. They're escorting them from stadiums to airports and all over the city like they're rock stars, and they're not. And so they're just using that stage to boost their image, I presume, but yet they're depending on the police officers to get them from one location to another. And I can tell you this, if that was taking place in my jurisdiction, if I was chief of police in St. Louis, I would tell those folks, you can find your own way to the airport from your stadium because I'm not doing it. That's disappointing. I was really disappointed in seeing that. And that's an entertainment stage. Those folks are entertainers. Entertain and do your business somewhere else because there's a lot of people paying a lot of money to watch it. So don't think you're anything more than a football player.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Well, let's jump to something here that's going on in our own backyard that you and I spoke about yesterday is some of the ramifications that we're seeing from SB 281. And I'd like for you to repeat the story you told me about the hunters that DNR has messed around with.
Yeah, I tell you, it was brought to my attention by one of my constituents about the local natural resources police and a citation issued to he and his brother, and the circumstances, and I'm getting to the bottom of it and trying to explain to DNR that I just simply don't like that tactic, and I don't think it's appropriate. But the circumstances are a couple of guys have been out hunting for the morning, and they are backing into their brothers. They back into their driveway at their house, which is several hundred feet off of the road, and apparently there had been a complaint up in that area. They weren't hunting in the area where they were at, where they had backed into their property. And a DNR officer shows up on their property, pulls down, makes contact with them, and good guys. In fact, I know them both. They make contact with the DNR officer, and he starts asking them about illegal hunting in the area, and they say no, they haven't seen anybody. Mind you, again, they're on their own property, and they're several hundred feet off of the property, and they have been sitting there for quite some time. So the DNR officer didn't see them drive there, didn't follow them there from a public road. He starts questioning them about if they have firearms in their cars, and they do. They had rifles, bolt-action style 308 rifles, and he asked to look at them, and they're open about it. And he says, "Yeah, go ahead and look in the truck." And they're there, and the bolt-action is open. And my understanding from them is the ammunition was somewhere close by the weapons, but had been disengaged from the weapons. And he tells them, "Hold on for a couple minutes." Comes back with two $250 citations for having weapons in their vehicles. He calls them loaded weapons in the vehicle when in fact they didn't have rounds in them. And so that upsets me, because here you have a couple of law-abiding citizens, and I know both of them, and they're good people. They did go hunting, but they're on their own property, and they own a sprawling farm in the northern part of the county. And I just think that's a total violation of their Second Amendment rights. And so I'm working with DNR currently to get to the bottom of whether they enforced it appropriately, which I don't think they did, and they're getting my 2 cents. And if that's how the DNR is going to operate in this county, then they're going to have a huge problem with the sheriff. So hopefully,
and I'm very glad to hear that, and I know a lot of other folks are probably going to be glad to hear that. And I'd like to see you put them on notice and say, okay, hey, if this is how you are going to act and conduct business in Carroll, then you need to come through us first, and you have to take one of our deputies with you so we can go ahead and supervise and make sure that you are not harassing Carroll County citizens or something along that line. I would like to see that work, or keep them out altogether.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? Listen, I've worked with the DNR folks for a number of years. I'm a retired state trooper, so like anything else, they may have overstepped their bounds on this one. I think they did, and there are always two sides to the story. So I'm going to listen to what the DNR has to say, and I wish I had the resources, Michelle, to send them out with every call that they go on. And I don't think it's an abundance of calls in this area, because I don't see them very often up here, and I guess that this is a part of one of their patrols, so they were swinging through answering a complaint. But I think overwhelmingly they do a good job. But really, let's focus on people that are out there committing violent crimes and taking the guns out of the hands of the non-law-abiding citizens. And yes, I'm a big natural resources guy. I'm a gun owner, a gun advocate, and I do believe we have to protect our resources, and we have to make sure folks are out there doing hunting legitimately and have their licenses and are doing those sort of things. And DNR has an appropriate place. But let's not overstep our bounds. Let's truly go after the people that are out there violating true natural resources laws, and as opposed to going after a couple guys on their own property that have guns, that have licenses that they displayed, and were open about allowing you consent to go look in their cars, not thinking that they were going to get a $250 ticket. I just think that's ridiculous. And so
you're right. Like, it's no good deed goes unpunished. And
yeah, I mean, these guys were open and honest about it, and they were punished for being honest on their own property. And so,
right.
They do have a district court hearing. I'm hoping to get it rectified before it goes to any court.
And that would be nice. And I'll tell you what, if this does become an issue with DNR, and if you see an uptick in them doing some of these ridiculous kind of stops, I'd like for you to come back on the show, or just give me a shout and let me know that this is happening. And if you would like to, if you need help on any of this kind of stuff, Sheriff, all you have to do is let us know. I have a whole group of folks that are willing and ready to step up if and when needed. So
yeah, I think that I know the superintendent of the Natural Resources Police, and good guy, and wants to do things in a righteous manner, and I think that we'll see a sway in what Natural Resources Police and Natural Resources folks concentrate on after January. We've elected a Republican governor that I think will redirect those resources and what we concentrate on when it comes to the Second Amendment and who's carrying what, and really concentrate on the criminals. And that's what I concentrate on, and that's what I want my deputies to concentrate on, taking the guns out of law-abiding citizens' hands, not stopping some guy on his property and taking his rifle out of his car, or even giving him a ticket and saying that he had a loaded weapon. I just think that's utterly ridiculous. And
you're absolutely right. Now, in the same vein of staying on SB 281 and Carol's sanctuary resolution, with Larry Hogan, Governor Hogan, taking office in January, I don't think that we're going to have to deal or worry too much about some of the concerns that we had with a Democrat governor. But do you have a problem still enforcing, and I mean not enforcing because you can't enforce a resolution, but do you support that resolution?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm familiar with the resolution, and even when it was passed in 2013, I was familiar with it, and it was in response to the Firearm Safety Act of 2013 that was drafted and eventually signed by the governor, and rightfully so, and absolutely. And the resolution basically says, hey, we are not going to use county resources, to support the new gun legislation. So no, I will not use my deputies and the resources of my organization, the Citizens Organization, in order to support the Firearm Safety Act of 2013. And that's easy to say because I don't support the Firearm Safety Act of 2013. I don't think that was another knee-jerk reaction to the Connecticut incident, and it wasn't really well thought out, and now they have to go back to the drawing board on a number of issues when it comes to that act in order to clarify a number of things within it. So, no, my deputies won't be going door to door. And, I've asked a lot of these questions, Michelle, along the trail, and, will I if the governor called me today and said, Jim, we need you to help us eradicate guns from your county, I would absolutely laugh at him and tell him good luck coming into the county doing that. And that is simply not going to happen. We will not use the resources of this office. And the resolution says for county, all county offices in order to support that particular legislation. So yeah, that's a no-brainer for me.
And for anyone out there that had any concern whatsoever, I really hope that puts it to rest once and for all, because I do believe you. I believe
you. Yeah, you should. I think I got the nod that I'm a retired state trooper, and I'm not just a trooper. I was an executive in the organization, and it's easy for me to say this now, but there was a lot of conflict in the organization when it came to that legislation and what the state police was bound to do by the governor. The state police is the governor's police department. I now run the People's Police Department, and that's easy for me to say, and so. Please, if anybody has any issue with that, you know where to find me, and 386-2600. Please give me a call, and I'll be more than happy to discuss it with you. But I don't want the citizens of my county to worry that I'm out there thinking about eradicating guns out of law-abiding citizens' hands. That is the complete opposite of what my intent is.
And like I said, I do believe you. Now, we have one more segment coming up after this upcoming break, and we're going to talk about the heroin problem that we have.
Sure, absolutely.
Please stay tuned, because this is a really important issue as well. And you are listening to Liberty Works Radio Network. I am Michelle Jefferson, your host. This is Feathering the Eagle's Nest, and we shall see you in about 5.
Now live from coast to coast and around the globe, more real talk, the kind you want, on Liberty Works Radio Network.
And thanks again for joining us, folks, one more time. This is Feathering the Eagle Fest. I am Michelle Jefferson, your host. We are on Liberty Works Radio Network, and if you would like to call in and ask the good sheriff a question, the number is 410-848-9191. Well, Sheriff, one of the things that you and I talked about yesterday was the heroin problem that we have up here in Carroll County, and I was quite surprised to learn about the depth and of it up here. I know that Baltimore City is one of the capitals in the whole country here for heroin, but I didn't think that we were so up to our elbows in it.
We are. It's hard to be that close to the heroin capital and not have some residual problems with it. So we do. And don't get me wrong, Carroll County is an extremely nice place, very safe. I obviously live here. I've lived here the majority of my life. I'm born and raised here. But we have seen an uptick in heroin overdoses, opiate usage, and it is the driving issue in this county. It is the most prevailing crime issue, the crime that stems from it, so that people can purchase and find that drug, whether it's thefts, burglaries, robberies, violent crime, although very minor in this county compared to when you go a little bit further east to the city, still is alarming to me. And so it is a problem, and it is something that we need in law enforcement, and not just law enforcement. It's a community problem that we need to address, but it's not just a problem here. It is a statewide issue, and if you go around and speak with the other sheriffs and other chiefs throughout the state and the region, you'll hear them say the same thing, that heroin, powder cocaine, those sort of drugs are now becoming the driving force behind the crime in their jurisdictions also.
Oh, goodness gracious. So what do you think, what do you have planned to start taking a bite out of this? That a
lot
on it, but...
Yeah, listen, no crime problem are you going to arrest your way out of it, especially an addiction problem. And so, it's no longer. So I oversee the detention center here, and Colonel George Hardinger is the warden, and I oversee the operations side. And so it's almost, the irony to it is I walk over to one colonel that's in charge of operations and say, this is what we're going to do to try and thwart the problem and solve some of these problems with heroin usage, and we develop a plan. And whether it's street-level usage, we got to make it uncomfortable for drug dealers to come up here and operate. And then I walk across the hallway, and I look at my other colonel that's in charge of the detention center, and he's like, hey, boss, we have 100 people. We're 100 people over capacity in the detention center. How do we lessen that capacity? So I've kind of got both sides here, where I'm trying to put people in jail, but then I've got people in jail that shouldn't be in jail, that could be productive citizens that are addicted to a drug. So it's a bigger issue than I'll put them in jail, arrest them, and put them in jail. It's a community issue. So we have to work with prevention, education, treatment, and law enforcement have to work hand in hand. But what we've seen is that it's too convenient to purchase it now. It's too convenient to get that drug. In the late 90s, early 2000s, you had to drive to Baltimore City predominantly to get that drug, and you would typically use it there. Now, the drug dealers have set up here. They're in Carroll County. And the reason they're here is because there aren't as many police officers as there are in Baltimore City. They don't believe that once they get arrested that they're going to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And when they're prosecuted, they don't believe they're going to be sentenced to any meaningful time. And the drug that they sell, they can get 2, 3, and 4 times more the money than if they were selling it in Baltimore City. So it's here. Because they know that the users in this county will pay that money as opposed to driving to Baltimore City and risking their lives to get it. And
wow. And so what do you think? You said they get 2-3 times more?
Oh, yeah. They get a lot more money. It's more profitable for the drug dealer to come out here and set up. And we discussed the homicide that took place a few months ago, and it was 2 rivaling gangs that were selling drugs in Carroll County, and they got into a battle, and one lost because the other one was basically executed on the side of the road in Carroll County. And historically in Carroll County, we don't see gang-related or drug-related homicides. Unfortunately, we see those domestic-related issues, and the second we start seeing a couple of homicides that are drug-related, it bothers me, it worries me, and so we have to address it.
I'm starting on that if that's the case, and that does bother me a great deal. Now, do you have a plan in place, or got it? Do you have a plan in place that might that's starting to work with the rehab part of it? I'm not sure what we can do on the education part of it, but do you have are you still in the formulation process, or are you ready to unveil something? Yeah,
here shortly I will unveil something that I'm hoping that will help both sides of this fence for me, the detention side and the services side, where we go out and actively pursue these folks. And I have to make it uncomfortable for drug dealers to operate in this county. And so it's not just me, it's hand in hand with the state's attorney, and we have a new state's attorney, and he and I are in the process of putting a plan together to create areas where we know these folks are operating and have a zero tolerance, and go into these areas and hit them hard and identify the drug dealers, arrest them, and prosecute them, so that it is not as convenient as it currently is to get these drugs and use them. But that's just a portion of it. We have to work with the health department and find good treatment locations for these folks, and some money has to free up, and we're hoping that our new governor will help us with treatment money and enforcement money so that we can attack the problem. But we want to go at it at a number of different angles, and I think we have a plan that we'll unveil here shortly once we can put the finishing touches on it and present it to the commissioners and make sure everybody's on board with it to go after these folks that are coming into the county with that drug, and in conjunction with treatment to make sure that these folks that are addicted to it don't keep kicking in doors while you're at work and stealing your stuff and pawning it. So, and that's the issue. That's a big issue in this county, thefts and burglaries during the daytime. And I'm here to tell you, if you're listening to me and you live in Carroll County right now, you are susceptible, specifically in those rural areas of the county, when you leave your house during the day. Lock your doors to your cars, lock your doors to your house. If you don't have an alarm, get an alarm, but be very cognizant that people are going to knock on your door, and if you don't answer it, there's a chance they're going to kick it in and steal your stuff. Be very protective of your property, and think of that before you leave your house for 8-10 hours a day. This is a bedroom community. Everybody, for the most part, is leaving here going to Baltimore and Washington, and we're leaving our houses, in some cases, unprotected. And my deputies and the other law enforcement agencies in this county can't be everywhere. You have to take some responsibility, put some measures in place.
And that's the big word, responsibility, all the way around. Well, Sheriff, we actually have a caller on the line, and his name is Bob, and I'd like to have Jane bring Bob in with us. Bob, are you with us?
I'm with you.
Hey, Bob, how are you?
Do you have a question for the Sheriff?
Indeed, I do. We're discussing the drug problem, and heroin has become rather cheap, and it's all over the place, primarily due to the success of our military knocking out the Taliban, so production is up. But the big problem is one of jurisdictional turf. As you sit on Main Street, you can watch these guys running up and down Railroad and on to Main, and a lot of it's being coordinated right out of that library, off those computers. Yet, I've made this problem known to the Westminster Police, and I wonder what kind of cooperation you're going to get between the Sheriff's Office and the City of Westminster Police, because that is rampant And you don't need to be a rocket scientist to see it going down day in and day out. I'll sit in a couple of those eateries there, and I'm familiar with all these business people. All of us watch the deals going down. Why is it nobody can catch them?
Yeah, no, you're right. And that is, you talk about turf battles, and you're right, when people hear turf battles, they think it's gangs, and a lot of times it's law enforcement that have their turf battles, and those barriers have to be brought down. And I am familiar with the chief of police in Westminster. He is a good guy, and he is doing what he can do, but he's overextended, just like most jurisdictions are overextended, but you're right. We know that there are certain areas in that pocket right there in front of the library, and I'm extremely familiar with it, because I grew up here and have policed that area myself. There's a lot of vagrants, and there's a lot of people there that are homeless or that are looking for a specific drug, and they are operating in and out of that particular area. And we have to go after that area. You're right. We have to go after that area, and that is the epicenter of Westminster City right there. And that's where all the old-time businesses are, and that's where people come to visit. And when you think of Westminster, that specific area there is what we want to keep clean, and we want to keep free, and we want to make sure that people feel safe walking down there. And in a lot of cases, they don't. But I assure you, Bob, and you can call me because we know each other, so you can call me and challenge me on this. I will work with the Westminster Police Department. I do know them very well. I know the council folks and the mayor there very well, and they do want assistance with helping with some of the problems that they have, and I think I'm just a guy to do it.
What, me challenge? I'll ask you this.
Didn't I know? I know what you're going to ask, but go ahead, Bob.
Do you really? All right. I appreciate what you said. But here's the question, framed up properly. What will you do to bring about a joint task force, if you will, between the city of Westminster, yourself, DEA, and anybody else that we can bring in to stop it? Because I watch it every day when I eat my lunch. What are you going to do right now, specifically?
I am working on just exactly what you talked about when it comes to support from the federal government via the DEA and allied resources in order to attack the very issue that you're talking about.
Because we had an overdose on Main Street just the other day. And they locked them up.
Bob, it's not just on Main Street. I know you're talking about that one area. It's not just on Main Street. We're talking about other areas also within the municipality of Westminster that need to be addressed, and that bleed out onto the areas of the county that I'm primarily responsible for. So it does affect what goes on externally when it comes to the city. So it needs to be addressed. And I think folks are at a point in the city where they understand that and are looking for assistance. But I would love to sit here and tell you my specific plans right now, but you will see them here in the near future when it comes to support from the federal government.
I've been in office for a week, and I don't think we can expect you to have it solved within that first week. But I think that I could probably, I think Bob will back me up on this, is that if there's anything that we as citizens can do to help with these different areas that you need help with. I understand that not having enough deputies, and there's only a certain amount of money that goes around through the county. Is there an opportunity for citizens to be able to help out in any of your endeavors?
No, there's always an opportunity for citizens to help out and be proactive when it comes to helping us police and identify problem areas. There's always that opportunity. And Bob, when you sit there, and you're there daily, if not regularly, it helps for us to know what you're seeing, intelligence gathering, and vehicles that are coming and people that are coming, and what are you seeing, and phoning those complaints into us.
It's more foot traffic than it is vehicles. I'll tell you that. And the other thing, when I've talked with the Westminster Police Department, they say that they can't just put a foot patrolman over there, that they have to call it out over the radio, and there's no apps.
I'm really sorry about having to do this, Bob. I apologize. And maybe what we can do is have a sheriff on another time, and Sheriff, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I look forward to your 4 years here, and I look forward to helping you out wherever I can as well. Bob, thanks for the phone call. Jane, thank you to our producer, who I can't do this without her. Folks, we'll be back next week.